Hey, welcome, Tamika Walker Kelly, and thank you so much tonight for being with us all the way from Fayetteville, North Carolina. And tonight we're having a conversation with Tamika Walker Kelly. She is a Cumberland County public school teacher. Tamika, we appreciate that you could join us. Tamika was one of our guests in the conference on October the 12th here in Raleigh. We had short period of time, so we did not have an opportunity to cover all the ground we wanted to. So Tamika was willing to come back and join us tonight and give us a chance to talk a little bit more in depth with her about what's going on in our public schools. Um, you know, uh, I think I mentioned that Tamika, I'm not sure if I did, but Tamika is a music teacher in Morganton Road Elementary. I know where that school is, Tamika. I've driven past it. Tamika and I share a little bit of background. I went to high school in Cumberland County and moved to Raleigh to go to graduate school, but I still visit Fayetteville occasionally, and I know where that school's at. She's also very proud of the fact that she was a North Carolina teaching fellow alum. She has served in several schools in many different roles, and she's been in the classroom in schools for over 12 years now. And she was one of the District Teacher of the Years in Cumberland County in 2015. She's the vice president right now of the Cumberland County Association of Educators. That's a big job. Thank you, Tamika. She is also on the board of directors for the NCAE and the statewide organization. And we're very proud to say that she's also serves on Public Schools First Board and Red for Ed NC. One of the things that Tamika, as you know, the whole theme and purpose of our um, conference that we had a couple weeks ago was really trying to understand what's going on in our schools in terms of privatization and segregation. And so we want to kind of visit that conversation again tonight with you. And we put a little slide up here to kind of remind our guests that what we're talking about is that effort by policymakers, especially at the national level, as well as in North Carolina General Assembly, to shift public education funds from the public sector into the private sector. And that's done by several ways. And if you would, we call this like a corporate takeover of our public schools. There are a lot of ways that this is being done, from charter schools to vouchers to education savings account, and other ways to disrupt the view of the public on our public schools is really, as well as ways that they've been disrupting the teacher pipeline. So this is kind of like what we're wanting to talk about a little bit more tonight, and how all these privatization efforts have also, Tamika, been ending up, in a situation we see that our schools are becoming more segregated as these programs have gained an audience. This was also, Tamika, you may have remembered this chart. We had it at the conference, and it really kind of outlined all these changes that have been going on in our state over the last 10 years. And just looking at this, is there anything that really pops out to you that's really been worrisome to you, or you've seen the impacts of in your classroom and your school and your school system?
So again, thank you for having me this evening. I enjoyed being at the conference and excited to continue this conversation this evening. So looking at this chart, some of the things that, of course, give me great concern is the amount of money that we're spending per student. We have continuously been near the lowest because we have not adjusted our per pupil spending due to inflation. We have not done that, and so we have not kept pace with our peers around the country. Teacher pay obviously is a big one that I immediately feel personally, but that my colleagues feel across the state, and is one that, of course, is one of our hot button issues right now, because we were aiming towards the national average years ago, and now we have stopped investing in teacher pay and recruiting and retaining new teachers, and so that's the thing that gives us pause. And then also we lost our job protections as educators, losing the ability to gain career status. Is one that also gives us pause, because when people don't have a sense that they are able to have due process rights in their career, they are less likely to stay in the profession, because there's no way for them to have fair and equal treatment. And so those are things, if I'm looking at this chart, all of them give me concern, but
Right.
these three definitely give me concern.
Well, I want to ask you a follow-up question about this due process. Since you're the first teacher that we've had on our follow-up calls, webinars, a lot of people really think that they call this tenure, and we know that really it's inappropriately called tenure. It is really a process in which allows you to have some protection. And why is this important? One of the things I heard your president of NCAE, Mark Jewell, talk about one time was how teachers have to have some independence from principals and parents in terms of making sure they're doing the right job for their kids and in their classrooms and so forth. So could you explain to folks how this does not mean that teachers can never be fired or never be reprimanded or never be censored or put into improvement programs?
Yeah, so you are correct. Tenure, in the way we talk about it as our career status, is a misnomer. It is not tenure as like faculty or staff receive at the collegiate level or higher ed. So what we have is what we call due process rights or career status. And what that does is once a teacher has obtained their full standard professional license, they are afforded the rights to due process, which allow them to have a set of meetings and processes in case they are given a reason for dismissal. That allows them to have an appeal process and ways to correct those issues that have been brought up during their teaching performance. Because we know generally in the state of North Carolina, it is an at-will state. And so these protections allow a teacher to not be dismissed without any recourse for the teacher, the educator. And so right now, all of our incoming staff, incoming educators, they do not have these rights. So they can be dismissed from one of 14 reasons that are outlined by the general statute, but they do not have, many places do not have a statewide system that offers them rights that they can appeal that process. Some counties have established career status on the county level, but there's no longer a statewide process for them.
Okay, and one of the things that before we move off this and really talk about some of these issues about school privatization, I want to just go back to this one more time in case some of our guests are looking at this with us. When we look at some of these changes over the last 10 years, almost all of these directly impact the teacher pipeline. You look at due process is gone, your master's pay gone, retirement health benefits. After 2021, if you're hired into the system, you'll not get health benefits when you retire. That is huge. Teaching fellows program is back now, but it's much very anemic and very smaller, and it doesn't really work with historically Black colleges. They're not on the list of schools that can give the teacher scholarships. You look at these are huge things in my mind when you're out there trying to talk kids into, hey, when you get to college, major in education, come and get a job here in our school system. This looks pretty dismal. Is it having an impact now in Cumberland County and across the state in terms of teacher retention or recruitment?
So you are absolutely correct that it does affect teacher recruitment and retention. So, for example, like you stated in my bio, I am a teaching fellow alum from East Carolina University, and so one of the ways that I was able to become a teacher is through the Teaching Fellow Scholarship, which I'm extremely grateful for. Because they cut the Teaching Fellows program as a political move and not really thinking about how it would impact the pipeline, they tried to reinstate this version of the Teaching Fellows program, but it does not address the lack of teachers of color that we have. So there are no Teaching Fellow programs at historically Black colleges, but also it does not have any places at colleges that are in rural areas where they also have high needs of teachers. So we have seen, of course, in our county, one of the ways that we are trying to encourage recruitment into the teaching profession is our county has established, like some of the other larger counties, a award to seniors who have decided to go into teaching, that if they come back to Cumberland County, that we will offer them a job. And so we have started a local program in our county to have our students who want to be education majors and be teachers to come back to Cumberland County. And there are other counties that are doing similar type programs. But we have started the past few school years with multiple openings, more than 50, 60, 70, 80 positions open, because we cannot find teachers because there aren't that many coming out of schools of education or even alternative placement. So even teachers who come to us through what used to be called lateral entry, we still don't have enough of those individuals who want to come into the teaching profession because of some of these other effects, like cutting of the master's pay, cutting the longevity, losing mentorship for new teachers. All of those things compounded on top of each other have led to a decline in the numbers in the teaching profession in North Carolina.
This should really be, to me, so compelling to the public that we have a crisis going on in our public school system. Because, even if you are a supporter of children attending traditional public schools, charter schools, or even private schools, you want those teachers to be trained, to be educated, to be qualified. And, we are, this pipeline that's burst and not working very well is going to impact all programs in education. This is not just impacting public schools. This is going to impact private schools as well. And so I think it's something that folks just really are missing an understanding of. So let's switch now and talk a little bit about one of the things that you talked about at the conference that was really intriguing and interesting, but how you've looked at school privatization and how it's impacted students of color. You had an excellent presentation in Raleigh. Share with us again and our audience now that's broader, what you see going on in North Carolina, as well as your own home county.
So here in Cumberland County, I will say that we do not have a lot of charter schools, and that makes Cumberland County unique. And I know we'll talk about that a little bit later. But school privatization is a unique sort of conundrum for parents and students of color. And one of the things that I talked about on the panel was that historically, public education has been an interesting thing for parents and students of color because, as you know, far back into history, being educated was a huge accomplishment for people of color because they restricted access to equal and funded public education. And so keeping that historical context in mind about the manufactured barriers to a free and public education, We know that particularly around school privatization and vouchers and charter schools, that they are particularly marketed to parents and students of color, that public schools are failing their children, and that is the narrative that many of them hear. And so they like to market those individualized attention, smaller class sizes, opportunities for sports that they may not get at a public school, and different kinds of programming to students of color. But ultimately, the glossy side of the marketing doesn't reflect what actually happens when they get to these particular schools. And so in these particular schools, we see a rise of school privatization, private schools. They contribute to the school-to-prison pipeline with either zero-tolerance discipline policies, or the curriculum is not as strong as it is in the public schools. And therefore, when those students leave and they return to public school, they are usually behind a grade level or two if they come back to the public school.
And when you're talking about that, tell me about, how about children with special needs for various learning disabilities or physical disabilities? How is that operating in terms of some of these alternate schools like charters or voucher private schools?
So in most our schools, now our public schools, as you know, we take all children and we service them all. So some of our students who go to private or charter schools, they do have to then come back to the public school to receive services, because their particular school outside of the school system cannot service them. They do not have the personnel it is beyond their capability, and so they return to the public school to get those services. And so we have a lot of students who should be at our school, who will come to see the occupational therapist, or come for speech, or come see the physical therapist at our school. Just this past week, we had a student who is at another school who came to our school to see the OT person. And so, because those schools cannot adequately service special needs students, we know that our public schools can. And so that's why, so a lot of them just, instead of coming back and forth between their schools, they end up just coming back entirely into the public school system.
Right. So let's look at that really fast. I had a couple charts here I was going to share with our audience. And this is one of those. This is looking at the number of charter schools that have, and their growth over the, as you can see, the last, since they started in 1997. And as you know, they were really started at the request of teachers who wanted an opportunity, certified professional teachers who wanted an opportunity to experiment and try some different instructional techniques and different variety of calendar times and class sizes and approaches to curriculum. What we find out now is we have over 200 charter schools by next year, and they're not being held accountable. And we see that they're also not fulfilling their mission of, and I'm just going to scoot ahead here. And this is another startling chart when you look at it, when you look at the amount of money that is leaving our public school system and going into, charter schools. And you can see that growth up into this year, and it's well over, it's millions and millions of dollars. It's well over $5 billion, the cumulative amount of money that we spent on charter schools. And when you think about how our school system's starving right now, that's kind of harsh. Now, Tamika, you mentioned that earlier, that this is not really a big of a deal in Cumberland County as it is in some other counties like Wake. What's going on there that makes this charter schools less interesting?
So I will note we do only have 2 charter schools in our county, and they are academically on par with the public schools in our county. So, but we do have a unique situation in that we do have in Fayetteville a lot of religious private schools. And so we do not lose a lot of students to charter schools. We lose a lot of our students to those private institutions. So, for example, one of the largest recipients of vouchers in the whole state is here in Fayetteville, and that is Trinity Christian Academy. And one of the draws for Trinity is that not only is it very near a lot of communities of color, historically white communities of color, that they market the school to, but it also has a really strong athletic program, and so they use that for to recruit students to come to their school, so for football and basketball. But also, because Trinity is the highest recipient of the vouchers, they've also been in the news lately in the past few years because they have been, there was an individual there that was embezzling funds that they received from the vouchers. And so because they don't have the same accountability standards as public schools, that leads us to ask for that accountability because they don't have it. And so with taxpayers' money that we are increasingly giving out to institutions that don't have to be accountable, we can invest that money into public education, into our public schools and our infrastructures, our students, our staff. It is important to note that, like you said, charter schools did start as a place where public school educators could try out innovative ideas. And that idea, right now, charter schools have gone so far beyond its original purpose because there are private entities, since, we're talking about privatization, there are private entities who saw this as a way to make money off of students and not actually invest in their well-being. And so we are increasingly seeing foundations and private owners and private businesses invest in the education model as a business sector. We know that schools are not businesses, students are not commodities, they are individuals that we are trying to develop to be great citizens of our state, our country, and our world. And so here in Cumberland County, the private school vouchers is our biggest issue when it comes to our students in Cumberland County.
Well, and I put the chart up while you were speaking. It shows how many kids you have getting vouchers. And this year in North Carolina, 12,000 at this moment, a couple of days ago, I checked this figure, 12,900 students are getting vouchers. That's about $50 million. $50 million that is going out of the public school system, education budget, into private schools. And in the past, we've always had this this belief in North Carolina and the country as a whole that private education is fine and that it should be something that people choose and they pay for themselves, but that the common good is that we will, as taxpayers, support a public school system free to all, and that is really worrisome to me that we're spending $50 million a year on vouchers. And I have a chart I want to share with our guests tonight, Tamika. But first, look at this eligibility changes. When it was first put in place, you mentioned it. You said it was marketed to a lot of low-income families, saying, hey, this is your way out of the public school system who's not serving you. Now the income rules have changed so much that 4% last year of families qualified in the whole state of North Carolina for vouchers programs. This year, it is a little higher, and I heard today that one of candidates for lieutenant governor was actually saying that he wanted all families to have the option, anyone should have the option to apply for a voucher. So not only does this take money out of our public school system, but you know, does it bother you, or what, worry you that there's no accountability for what the kid is learning? If we can get over the money part, can we, and think that at least the kids being educated, how do we know what's going on?
So yes, the eligibility changes give me concern and give educators a concern, because they are marketing, they initially market them to low income families who have limited income. But this increase in who is eligible for vouchers is by design, and it is a way to eventually allow families who are more affluent to use state dollars to, like you said, resegregate our schools. We know that public schools right now are full of kids who are primarily Black and brown students. And because of that, we are seeing a rise of people who are taking these vouchers and moving to other schools because they do not want to be in their neighborhood school, and which is primarily students of color. So when they create these schools, there is no accountability, especially on the private school side. There is no accountability for what the curriculum is. In a charter school, they are still mandated to use the state curriculum. Now, how they teach that it varies, because they are not on the same sort of schedule or unit planning or pacing as the public school. But in a private school, there is no telling what sort of curriculum they are allowed to teach, whether it is fact-based curriculum, whether it's science-based curriculum, and therefore you have wild varieties of things that students are being taught across these private school entities. And so whenever a student,
I want to just interject one quick minute, because you were talking about this, and this here you can see what's going on here with the voucher money. Very similar, right? We're up to billions of dollars. But here's what you were talking about. I really wanted to share with the audience as you're talking. Look at this, Tamika, and tell me what you see. You see what you said is really true. Look. You can see these are the vouchers, and they've gone to school by curriculum. We've got the Christian literal biblical worldview, the Christian curriculum unknown, other religious groups. That's all the green, the blue. That's an incredible chart there.
Yeah, there's a huge gap between what students learn in a public school setting versus what they learn in private schools, only because of the variety of curriculums that private schools have access to, up to the fact that they can design their own curriculum. And when all of these students, again, meld together, if they decide to go to a college institution, then there is again, conflicts on the collegiate level about curriculum and items and things that they have learned prior to getting there. So we support parents. As I'm a parent, so I support parent choice. And we just want parents and the community and others to have factual information about the choices that they are being presented. We want them to have the full picture, because ultimately, alongside the parent, the educator is advocating for children as well, and we want our public school children to have the same high quality access to resources so that they can have a high quality education as well.
That's a very good point. And I want to just add one last point on the vouchers to your point earlier, Tamika. In some states where the voucher eligibility has gotten higher and higher, where more and more, not just low income, but middle class families are eligible to apply for a voucher, what we've seen is that private schools start tightening up on who they let in. And eventually it becomes a voucher for middle class parents to use to supplement their choice to have a private education. And I'm with you, private education is perfectly great. And if parents choose to have a private education because they want a special type of experience for their child, including one that's guided by religious principles, that's perfectly fine. But using tax dollars is where, some people disagree that that's appropriate use of public tax dollars. And as you said, ultimately, because what kind of preparation are we giving these students to compete at the college level or in the workforce? So I want to turn now and allow some of our folks in the audience to share some questions with you. And we have a couple here, and one of the questions I'm seeing pop up here is they want to know how is your school district working to deal with segregation by class or race? Do you have any great examples of how it's working or things that you're trying to experiment with? So that's the question.
So our school district is currently working, well, we have a school choice program here in Cumberland County, and we just recently had our choice fair. And so we offer parents and students the opportunity to check out different programs and to go out and see different schools. But we do have we do have two sets of kind of school systems because of the way our neighborhoods are in Cumberland County. And so one of the things is that our county has started doing equity training. We've been having we had a strategic plan that addresses student equity and equitable schools for all students and opportunities for all students. And so our school system has been really taking a really strong effort. Obviously, there's always more work that can be done, especially around making sure that all students continue to have access to high quality programs no matter what side of the county they are on. But we are making strides in the right direction. And if we continue that work, I think we'll be able to see more gains and more equitable resources across the county.
It says here, I think, this is a great question. What do you wish parents understood better about teaching and instruction today?
So one of the things is that because we are trying to build critical thinking skills in our students, that not that the way that we used to do teaching is the best way or wrong or right. It's just that we are trying to prepare students for jobs that currently don't exist. And so we are preparing them for a world that is super hyper connected on technology, that the world has gotten much, much smaller because of technology. And so we're trying to prepare students to be critical thinkers, to think about how and why we do things and not just teaching them by rote, so that they can confront problems that may arise out of this new world that we are continuing to find ourselves in. 20, 30 years ago, we would have never talked about computer hacking. 20, 30 years ago, we would have never talked about printing items out of plastic in 3D. So those kinds of challenges and opportunities to be innovative and creative, we are preparing for. And so we are want parents to know that the academic side of education is a bit more rigorous. It is a bit more challenging for students. We also want parents to know that we love our kids and we love our schools, and we want to continue to build those partnerships with our parents and students and communities. But our teachers are, because this job has gotten increasingly difficult with more responsibilities on the classroom teacher, on education professionals in schools, that it is going to have to take a partnership between the parents and the schools and the communities. And so anytime that parents can come into the schools and work with teachers and help volunteer, and anytime that teachers can do the reverse and come out and support parents at community events and at student events, we want to do that. And so we want parents to know that we are here to support and help them advocate for the needs of students.
Good answer. Very good answer. And, here's another question about the impact of segregation on our schools. Can you explain a little bit more or share with us about the impacts of segregation in your own school system? Or maybe the alternate, the person says here, is what are the values of an integrated school, and how do you see that improving for your students as a teacher?
So I will answer the reverse. So integration of ideas of diverse populations, of different abilities, that helps students learn how to live in this global society. We often champion diversity, and we champion that, and then sometimes we have people who don't want us to interact with each other, and that's just not how the world works. And so I am glad to be in a diverse school. We have lots of populations represented in our school, and I'm happy that I work in a county where diversity is celebrated and welcomed. And so when we have those things, our students not only learn about each other's cultures, but they learn to move beyond tolerance, but they move to acceptance and celebration of these different cultures and identities and individuals. Because the world is not all the same. If everyone were the same, that would not be a very exciting and rich place. And so, therefore, when we celebrate the integration of ideas and cultures and individuals, then we truly get a worldview experience in our schools. And so that is one of the things that we champion in our school and in our school district. And I'm proud that we're doing that, and I do believe that other people should do the same.
Okay. Here's another question from a parent of a child who might want to be a school teacher. They said, what do you think can be done to deal with the teacher pipeline? What are the suggestions you'd have for lawmakers about the teacher pipeline? And what would you do to advise parents about their children's interest in going into education? So that's a question for the lawmakers, and then a question from parents who have kids who are thinking about teaching. So so maybe we'll start with the lawmaker part of the question. What should the lawmakers be doing right now? What should be their goals for next year in 2020 to deal with the teacher pipeline before this issue gets any worse?
So for our lawmakers, I would like to see an investment in programs at the high school level to encourage students to become teachers. When I was in high school, I was in a teacher cadet program, and many programs like Teacher Cadet, Future Teachers of America, those programs help highlight and identify students who are already thinking about a career in teaching and exposing them to that already. So making sure that we continue the funding and even increase funding for Teacher Cadet and programs like that. And then, of course, restoring in its fullness the North Carolina Teaching Fellows Program. Many of our teachers who stayed the 4 years after the Teaching Fellow Scholarship are still here teaching in North Carolina. And so restoring that program, making sure that our teachers and our interested teachers in the collegiate level get that experience through the Teaching Fellows program helps grow the pipeline. And then, of course, we want to reach out to those individuals who might not have, certified themselves in education but are interested in children and in teaching, and making sure that they also have access, but they have quality professional development and child development and different pedagogy so that they can be successful when they come into the classroom. We're not talking about just certifying anybody, because that is one of the things that has been trying to be pushed through North Carolina, is that anybody who wants to teach could go through a 6-week process and become a teacher. We're not recommending that. We want to have a program where people who are interested in being educators learn about children and learn about really strong teaching practices, but might not have, majored in education but want to be a teacher. So we want our lawmakers to help us restore the pipeline, but also to retain our teachers by restoring master pay, restoring longevity, and restoring through, teacher pay, so that our educators and every education professional in the building are adequately paid professionally. That's what would be helpful in restoring the pipeline for educators. For the parent who has a child who wants to be a teacher, I say yes. I would never, ever, ever tell somebody to not become a teacher, because our students here in North Carolina deserve great teachers. So I would recommend shadowing a local teacher, coming to the public school and seeing what they do for a day. Come and visit, come and shadow, come and volunteer at the school. Have them get involved with other college majors through our Aspiring Educators program. NCAE has one. Other colleges have like teacher clubs that they can go through to kind of talk through what it's like being a student teacher at a school. And then, of course, in its current form and in its future expanded form, apply for the Teaching Fellow Scholarship so that you can come and do special experiences that will prepare you for the teaching profession. So I'm excited when somebody says that they want to become an educator, because that is one of the greatest things that you can do to prepare our North Carolina for a better tomorrow. So I think that is amazing.
That is great. And I know that you are active in your local NCAE, and you're also active in the North Carolina Association of Educators. Are your organizations doing anything as professional organizations to help teachers develop skills? I know that we've lost a lot of staff development money in the local school systems. As part of being in your organization, are there things that y'all are doing to help retain and strengthen teachers?
So yes, I am very active in North Carolina Association of Educators and the local unit, Cumberland County. And our statewide organization, along with our local organization, does offer professional development for educators, and we have been doing that for a while. Currently, we offer professional development around trauma-informed instruction, because we know students that have adverse childhood experiences need special strategies in order to be successful in the school environment. But we also make sure that we offer professional development around other areas as well. Instructional advocacy, knowing the standards, being able to lead from the classroom, because not every educator wants to be an administrator. Not every educator wants to leave the classroom in order to advance in education. So we know that a lot of our advocacy comes from having strong instructional leaders. So our local and the statewide organization, NCAE, currently does a wealth of professional development that our members and some of our people who are not members of the organization can also tap into as well.
Okay, that's great membership benefits, I guess, right there. And you touched on something that sparked another question for you, and that is, you mentioned adverse childhood experiences. This person says that they saw recently that the second leading cause of death for kids 10 to 17 was suicide. So we know that kids spend a lot of time at school. What is the current situation with helping professionals in your school system? You know, nurses, social workers, counselors, psychologists. What's going on in terms of support staff in our school system, and where do you see the problems?
So right now, currently, many of our public schools are underserved in the student support area because there are not enough individuals in a school system to help with mental health issues or other student support issues. Our student support that we currently have from our school counselors, our psychologists, our social workers, they are doing absolute wonderful work, but they have full caseloads, more than the nationally recommended ratio. And so what that does is that teachers, educators are now taking on additional responsibilities of not trying to serve as mental health providers, but strategies, taking on additional strategies to help students that may have some health challenges, working in concert with our student support professionals. So educators, of course, when we participated in May 1, we asked for an increase in student support professionals because we know that our students are coming to school with more experiences, that they are dealing with trauma, and our teachers are not always adequately trained to handle that. And so we do need resources for them. And we know that our student support personnel can do that work, but they too are overworked as well. They have more than what they can handle. And so we need to increase those positions. We need to increase the funding for those positions. We need to increase the pay for those positions as well, so that our schools are adequately resourced with enough of that personnel.
Well, very interesting, and I do want to take this moment to point out to folks in our audience that go to our website, Public Schools First NC, and click on the issue resilience. We have wonderful video clips there. We have lots of resources for parents, for teachers, for principals. We are showing that film all over the state. We're showing it once a month in Wake County. So I encourage folks to please go and learn more, excuse me, about what's going on with adverse childhood experiences, ACEs for short, and the issues around resilience in our schools. We know, I'll give an example to your point, Tamika, which is, I saw a statistic that said we should have one social worker for every 750 kids. And in Wake County, I know their numbers, they do not have a social worker for each school. They have social workers that share schools. Like one of my dear friends has an elementary school and a middle school. She has a caseload between those two schools of 2,300 kids. So you can see that she's not doing much more than triage, right? The most critical things like suicide alerts and those kind of things. And that suicide alerts in our school system as a whole have been up the highest levels ever for the last 3 years. So thank you for mentioning that and getting this question in here, because this is really probably one of the key things about that we need to talk about. In fact, one of the teachers just put in here that she attended one of our films, and one of the most significant things she heard was the secondhand trauma, which is what she says teachers are experiencing, like secondhand smoke, secondhand trauma, that there's so many kids in her classroom are homeless, are food deprived, are dealing with issues with mental health and addiction in their home and in their homes, and come into school, and the impact that's having on teachers who aren't prepared to deal with the behavior of some of the kids and the special needs they have. So very important. And thank you, teachers, on May 1st for speaking up for making sure the whole child can be dealt with in the school setting. Very, very good. And the last thing I asked you to think about for tonight, and maybe we'll do this as a way of closing, Tamika, is the whole purpose of public education, and we talk about that a lot. You had something to say about that at the conference, about the common good, that public education is really the cornerstone of our democracy. It fuels our economy. It gives our children what they deserve in terms of the constitutional right to a fair, high quality education. But talk a little bit about your role as a teacher, how you got into being involved professionally in your organizations, and kind of why you're so deeply involved in the issue of advocating for public education and for teachers, and how it relates to this concept of the public good.
So I believe in the promise of public education. And here in North Carolina, we had always been a beacon in the South for public education. And we know that, like you said, public education is the cornerstone of our democracy, but we also know that public schools are foundations of communities. Public schools, like churches and neighborhoods, are places where families and communities gather, where connections are formed, and where lasting bonds are made. And so as a student, it was my public school teacher who encouraged me to be a teacher, who encouraged me to be successful. And like many people, we all have a connection to an educator who has inspired and changed our lives. And therefore, it is super important. It is vital that we invest in our public schools. And not only do we invest in them, but we fight to defend and transform our public schools so that our students can have the schools that they deserve. I've been very passionate about this topic ever since I became a teaching fellow, and I've worked in many different schools as a student volunteer to student teaching, and in the current school that I am in now, because I get a chance to see how being connected to the school can improve the lives of a student, the families, and the communities around the school. And in that work, I am deeply involved in my union work. I'm the North Carolina Association of Educators, and because of that, I've decided that I wanted to take on a more prominent role and run for the leadership, because I feel that our public schools need advocates. They need parents. They need the community to say that we love our public schools and that we're willing to fight for them. And our society needs our public schools, because all of our students deserve to have access to a high-quality, well-rounded public education, and that high-quality education shouldn't be limited to a few. It should be available to all of us. And therefore, if we are advocating and defending and transforming our public schools, then we can have the best school system in the state, in the nation, in the world for North Carolina students. And so, yes, public education is part of the common good, and is part of the belief that is going to uplift us all, so that everybody has a chance to be successful.
I don't think I've heard anyone say it quite as beautiful as you have tonight in some time. And of course, you are singing from the Public School First NC hymn book here. And as I wrap up, I want to say, first of all, Tamika, you are appreciated. We thank you so much for your time that you gave us a couple of weeks ago. We thank you again. We know you're teaching tomorrow. This is a school night, and you've come once again to spend some time and share some of your thoughts with us. We so value our public school teachers. I do hope that folks will stay involved with us. We are advocates for public education all across North Carolina. You've said beautifully our belief system, which is that every child, regardless of gender, race, sexual orientation, zip code, income, deserves the constitutional right they have to a strong public education. So we are 100% with you. And we encourage our public to, you know the drill. It's very important when you're a small nonprofit for people to like you on Facebook and follow you on Twitter and sign up for your newsletter. We have almost 100,000 folks who get our newsletter every week, and nearly 26,000 folks who follow us on Facebook. So share information with us, teachers, parents, ask us questions, let us know what's going on in your community so we can share it out. And Tamika, congratulations to you for your success in teaching, but also for your courage to step up and to run for office within your professional organizations. That's hard to do. Not a lot of people will do it. And so congratulations to you for doing it. And to our audience tonight, thank you very much for joining us. I hope that you've learned a little bit more tonight. I hope you'll stay engaged with us. We are still waiting at this time for a raise for our teachers. We didn't talk about that tonight, but we know that there has been a bill sitting on the governor's desk about teacher pay, which we find that is inadequate. And so we're all going to be staying tuned to see what happens there. So once again, Tamika Walker Kelly, proud to say I'm from Cumberland County with you. Congratulations on your success, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. So good night to everybody.
Good night. Thank you for having me.